Yo, what's up, guys? I'm here with Scott, aka Tangy Puss.
Hey, y'all.
Thank you for joining me. I just wanted to do a quick little video on the coronavirus, or not video, fucking podcast on the coronavirus, because obviously you've heard about it. If you haven't heard about it, then I don't know where the fuck you've been. But the reason I wanted to talk about it is because it's not as much about like we've talked about, it's not as much about like, say, you or I getting it that I'm concerned about. It's more or less the effects of it that are going to happen as far as shutdowns, things that have already happened. I mean, we've had so I'm sure you guys have had similar things where you're from. Schools shutting down, people's work shutting down. I know I've talked to a couple people here in the Rogan and RuneScape community that have had their work shut down, and they're made to work from home online and on the internet. And I was told that by a student here in a nearby county that they're gonna have to do work online, which you think about, like, if you think about that, just like the student said, you know, some of the kids in high school don't have access to internet, so it makes that kind of difficult, you know, for those kids. What happens to them? Another weird thing, another weird effect of it is it's something that I didn't even really think about until I think the Broadberry. I think it was like, you know, the Broadberry on Broad Street, you know, the concert venue place. I think they had posted something. I could be wrong, but I think they posted something on. It was like an Instagram ad or something talking about how, like, kids that rely on school lunches, they're not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to eat because, you know, their parents are working, or their parents don't have, you know, money or food. So, you know, when you're in high school, you what do they call them? Like milk credit accounts, or like the milk.
Yeah, it was. We had like our own little code and everything.
Well, there was wasn't there like a special program for people that didn't have like as much money? It was like a special lunch thing where they could get discounts and stuff like that, or free food. So I mean, if you think, you know, that's one thing that I never really thought about. And then it's just kind of crazy to think that, you know, something so simple as like the virus is going to be affecting how people eat. And another thing that's really crazy is if you think about like the kids that can't go to school, what about if their parents are nurses, you know? Like, well, then if they don't have anyone to take care of their kid, they're going to have to stay home from work.
That brings up a crucial point to this element of when you're talking in terms of hospitals. That's why they're coming up with reserve nurses and reserve doctors, because a lot of the doctors are getting sick themselves, so they have to go home and they have to have a backup. And some of these reserves are either people still going through college, or they're retired and they come back as for temporary, or until this thing, how long ever it persists. It should be over roughly. Now, I'm no prophet at all. Nobody. I'm not you know, saying anything of that bizarre nature, but for certain, we know already that the water moisture, the barometric pressure, in other words, in the air, that causes it to excuse me,
the humidity in the air, or whatever. Were you talking about like what you were telling me earlier about like springtime and summertime or something?
Yeah. All right. Summed up. Closer it gets to summertime, more likely this thing's gonna be out of here, wiped out. I was trying to come up with some exact words that I heard almost verbatim off of the news, and I got stumped for a second there. But yeah, summed up, this thing should be out of here within a few months, and everybody's kind of extrapolating it way out of proportion. But we still must assume the worst, because if you're not safe, as using common sense and washing your hands, your fingers, and vigorously cleaning, using hygiene, simply put, you know, you want to assume that you already have it, because even if you'll never even get it at all, just like with any other illness, you don't want to go around nonchalant, cavalier, and
not taking preventions. So in your opinion, though, you think that it's something that's going to pass soon? Because I'll tell you, in my opinion, I don't think it's something that's going to pass soon. I don't have any evidence to show that it's going to be this long-going thing. But the way I think about it is the school's closed down for like 2 weeks. my electrical school closed down for 2 weeks, because of this. And they're closing down because they're trying to prevent the spread like you're talking about. But they don't have a cure yet.
There's definitely nothing to be taken lightly at all. All I was trying to emphasize is just the fact that it's something most likely due to the past viruses of this magnitude. They're nothing to take lightly at all. That's just possible predictions based on previous episodes.
So that's their prediction, is that it's going to be over soon. But I personally don't think it's going to be over soon. Now that's, like I said, that's just my opinion. I don't necessarily have evidence to back that. But so why don't we get into it, or just read a quick thing from Wikipedia. It says coronavirus are a group of related viruses that cause diseases in mammals and birds. In humans, coronavirus cause respiratory tract infections that are typically mild, such as some cases common cold. Rare forms such as SARS. Whoa. So SARS, MERS, MERS, and COVID-19. So those are different versions of the orthocoronavirinae. I guess that's the genus species, or whatever it's called, the Latin name for it, or whatever. I didn't know that, though. I think you were talking about how SARS is a form of it.
Yes. Keep in mind also there's a barrier. You go back on the point you're talking about how it's going through mammals, and there's a barrier between species and species. Yes, like for instance, your dog could catch it, but to contract it from the dog is not as likely as contracting from a human. It stays on obviously less porous surfaces longer, like wood or plastic, but it'll stay probably for about approximately 3 hours on just metal. And it's like waterborne. It's a virus. I'm no medical doctor, obviously, but from what I've researched and heard, I can go back to the point I was mentioning about the air humidity levels. That plays a significant factor in how it's going to be contracted or where it's going to when it leaves, because it's an upper respiratory. And a lot of the symptoms it carries are fever. Most prevalent is the fever and the chills and the sweats that are accompanying most likely most commonly with the like flu symptoms.
Bro, you might have corona with the It's all good, man.
Yeah, I have.
Calm down. You're good.
Tendency.
You're good. Just take a breath. You're doing great. I didn't even know that information about the plastic, the metal, and the wood. So which one did you say has the time that it lasts the least on? Is it
metal followed by wood? I remember very profoundly, wood 12 hours, metal 3 hours. And I believe they said plastic can be up to 3 days, but don't.
Oh, so wood is where it lasts the least.
No,
3 hours. It's only on there for 3 hours.
Metal 3 hours, wood 24 hours, and I believe they said plastic 3 days.
Okay, well, so metal. So we need to start building everything out of metal. Then is what it seems like it's getting to, so that it won't last long. They need to convert the roads to metal. They can make houses out of stainless steel.
Wow, you're talking about a lot of money there, and it's a natural resource, but
Speaking of building materials, we watched this documentary. It's infectious now. We watched this documentary where China was building a new hospital, and they were saying it's only going to take 1 week. So they're really going full force into building hospitals and really just taking control of this. They've shut down the city. Didn't it look like it was something straight out of a movie? Like they had people in these white hospital outfits, and they were stopping people coming into either Beijing or Wuhan, and they had this like machine that they pointed at the dude's like forehead.
It checks their fever.
Oh, really? That's what it was? Yeah, I was confused. I was like, what device is that? Because they didn't actually specify. They didn't say if it was like a corona device, but that makes sense. So it's checking to see if you have fever. So I also found out from that video, I could post a link in the description, that the Chinese government was quiet about it up until January 22nd. That's when they held a press conference, and started talking about it a little bit. And also in that documentary, we saw that one guy was like saying how what other government in the world, has such a failure in handling this. And so the people of Wuhan are really pissed off, actually, through these videos, what we've seen. And it makes total sense because I didn't get to show you the point in the video where they start welding the doors shut on these apartment complexes, but they're literally taking like a welder or whatever it's called, and they're welding the metal on the door shut so people can't get out of their apartments. And people in the apartments, I'll show it to you later, they're like screaming out their apartment windows. Like one of the videos, it was saying, this is all fake, this is all fake. That's what the people of Wuhan were saying. And they were saying how the spokesperson or the local government was really failing at what they said they were going to do. They said that they were going to take care of the people there, but I guess they're not really giving people the food that they need, the supplies that they need, and they're literally just barricading them in their houses. Also, at one point in the video, they had this like spray. They had this dude walking around spraying something like to, I guess, stop the spread of the virus. But it's really crazy. I would highly encourage people to look at videos of Wuhan, China. Like it was a ghost town, and yes. Beijing was like completely like desolate, and deserted, and no one was in the streets. And Beijing is a huge town or city. So it says right here that, and I wasn't sure about this. It says that the coronaviruses were first discovered in the 1960s. The earliest ones discovered were an infectious bronchitis virus in chickens and in human patients with the common cold, later named human coronavirus 229E and human virus OC43. Other members of this family have been identified, including SARS-CoV in 2003, HCOV NL63 in 2004, HKU1 in 2005, MERS-CoV in 2012, SARS-CoV-2, formerly known as 2019, and COVID. So I didn't necessarily know that this was something that had been around for a while. But so from what I understand, this virus has been around for a while, but it's a new mutation of it. And how were we told that they got this? It was through eating.
At a seafood market.
Right. It was what they call
That's one theory.
Wet markets. And that's another interesting thing I'd encourage you guys to look at is these wet markets where they have all these random animals, man. They had, I know Joe Rogan talked about, they had salamanders and I don't know what that one animal that looked like an anteater was, but they have all these random animals, bats. That's what we were told, that they were eating bats and stuff like that. So this could, as we see here, it's existed for a while. There's a new mutation. So it could be, I guess, natural. But, one of the first things that came to mind when I saw this stuff was, okay, this is not natural. This is something that was released onto China, something that was released onto the globe as a form of either political protest or most likely population control. Also think about the war on trade that America has been going back and forth with China. Now, this is complete speculation, but it's kind of like that game when you were kids and you would order from the kid menu and there would be dots, and then you connect the dots and you draw a pattern. That's all I'm saying, guys, is, we got the dots and you can draw your own pattern, but to me, this seems a little bit like population control. That's a little bit. I had a question for you, though. I forget what it was now, but I wanted to show you this too. I don't know if you had seen this. Have you ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones?
I have not.
So the Georgia Guidestones are these stones that are in Georgia. I think they were put there in 1980, and they say some really creepy stuff. Now, I highly encourage you guys to look this up because, once again, like I was saying, you have the dots, and this is something I've known about for a while, the Georgia Guidestones. So it's a dot, and then you draw your own pattern. So they're basically linked to the New World Order, and right here on these Georgia Guidestones, it gives you guides as to how to control, I guess, the world. This one right here, it says maintain humanity